Alright, Chapter 3, Literature, Great Expectations. My father's family name being Pirip, and my Christian name being Philip, and my infant tongue could make me both names, but nothing longer more explicit than Pip, so I called myself Pip. And I came to be called Pip. I gave Pirip as my father's family name and the authority of the tombstone of my sister, Mr. Joe Garrigy, who married my sister, Mrs. Joe Garrigy, who married the blacksmith. I never saw my father and my mother never saw them likeness of them. Their days were long before the days of the photographs. My first fancy regarding what they were like were unreasonable to derive from their tombstone. The shape of the letters that my father gave an odd idea that he was square, stout, dark man, colored black hair with the character of the term of the inscription of the also Georgian wife of the above. I drew a childish conclusion of the mother that freckled sickly to 5 little stone lozenges, each of the foot of the half long, were arranged with a neat row, and beside her grave were sacred for the memory of the 5 little brothers of mine who were gave up and tried to get a living exceedingly early in that universal struggle, indebted for the belief of the religiously entertained that they had been born on the backs of with their hands with a trouser pocket that had never been taken out in a state of existence. How ours was a marsh country, down by the river, within the river wound 20 miles of sea. But the first, most vivid and proud impression would identify with the things seemed to be that may have been gained with a memorable raw afternoon towards evening. At such a time, I found that the outskirts of the bleak place, overgrown with nettles, plants of jagged leaves, was the churchyard, and the Philip Pirip, last of the parish, and also Georgian wife wife above was dead, with the buried, and Alexander, Bartholomew, Abraham, Tobias, Roger, infinite children of the aforesaid were also dead and buried. With the dark flat wilderness beyond the churchyard intersected the dikes and mounds of the gates, with scattered cattle feeding on it, with the marshes, so that the leading line beyond the river, the distant savage layer from which the wind was rushing, was the sea. That the small bound shivers, growing afraid of it, all beginning to cry, was Pip. "Hold your nose," cried with a terrible voice. A man started up from among the graves to the side of the church for the poor. "Keep still, is a little devil, or cut your throat." A fearful man, all in coarse gray, with a great iron on his leg. A man with no hat, with the broken shoes, and with an old rag tied around his head. A man who had soaked in the water, smothered in mud, and lammed in by stones, and cut by flints, sung the nettles and thorns by barriers, who limped and shivered and glared and growled, and whose teeth chattered in his head, and seized me by the chin. "Oh, don't cut my throat, sir," I plead in terror. "Pray do not do it, sir. Tell us your name," and said the man. "Quick, Pip, sir." Once more the man said, "Give it mouth." Pip, sir, show me where you live," said the man. Pin it out on the place. I pointed to where the village lay, with the flat inshore, with among the elder tree, with the pollards, and a mile more than from the church. The man, after looking at me with a moment, to turn me upside down, emptied my pocket, but there was nothing in them but a piece of bread. The church came to itself, where he was sudden and strong, that he made it go head over heels before me. I saw the steeple under my feet. When the church came to itself, I I was seated on a high tombstone, trembling while he ate the bread ravenously. "You young dog," said the man, licking his lips, "what fat cheeks you got. I believe that they were fat enough that I was at time understand, but for many years not strong. Darn me if I couldn't eat me. Darn me if I couldn't eat 'em," I said the man, the threatening shaking of his head. "If I haven't half a mind to do it." I earnestly expressed my hope that one the end together with the tombstone on which he had put me, partially to keep myself upon it, and partially to keep myself from crying. "Now look here," he said the man. "What's your mother? Where's your mother?" "He's there, sir." And I said, he stated my short run, stopped and looked over my shoulder. "There, sir," I timidly explained, also the Georgian, that's my mother. "Oh," he said, he said, "coming back? Is this their father along with your mother?" And he said, "Yes, sir, I'm him too late of this parish." "Ha," he muttered, then considered, why do you live with us, supposing you kindly let to live, which I hadn't made up his mind about. My sister, Mrs. Joe Gardry, wife Joe Gardry of the blacksmith, sir. Blacksmith, eh? Looked down on his leg. After darkly looking at his leg several times, he came close to my tombstone and took me in both arms and tilted me back as far as he could hold me. And so, as his eyes looked at my poor folly down, but the man looked by helplessly up to his. "Now look here," he said, question being whether you're to be let to live, or you know what a file is. "Yes, sir." "You know what a witless is? A slang of victuals or foods?" "Yes, sir." "Answer the question." He tattled me over a little more, so give me the greater sense of the helplessness of danger. You get me a file," he tilted me again. "You get me a wittles," and he tilted me again. "You bring me in both to me," he tilted me again, "or I'll have your heart or liver out," he tilted me again. I was dreadfully frightened and so giddy with it that I clung up with both hands and said, "I would, if you would kindly please let me keep upright, sir. Perhaps I shouldn't be sick. Perhaps I could have attended more." He gave me a tremendous dipping roll so that the church jumped over its own weathercock. Then, when he held me by his arms, the upright position on the top of the stone went on these fearful terms: "You bring me tomorrow in the morning early with that file with the wittles, with the bring with the lot of me and that old battery over yonder. You do it. You never dare to say a word or dare to make any sign concerning you have seen such a person as me with a person somewhere ever you should be let to be live. You fail, and you go for my words any particular, no matter how small it is, your heart and your liver shall be tore out, roasted, and ate. Now I ain't alone, as you may think I am." The young man hid with me. Comparison with which, a young man, I am an angel. The young man hears the words I speak. The young man has a secret peculiar to himself, getting a boy in his heart and in his liver. It is in a way for the boy to attempt to hid himself from the young man. A boy may lock his door, may warm the bed, may tuck himself up, may draw his clothes over his head, may think himself comfortable and safe, but the young man would softly creep his way to him and tear him open. I'm keeping the young man from harming you at the present moment, but a great difficulty. I find it very hard to hold the young man off your inside. Now, what do you say?" I said what I could get them in the file. I said that I would get him the file, and I would get him the broken bits of food that I could, and would come into him in the battery early in the morning. He said, "With the Lord strike you dead if you don't," I said the man, and I said, he took me down. Now he pursed, "You remember what you've undertaken, and you remember the young man. You go home. You get home. You get home. Go good night, sir," I faltered. Much of that sight, he glanced about him over the cold, wet flat. "I wish I was a frog or an eel." At the same time, he hugged his shrouding body, both arms clasping himself as he told himself together, limped toward the low church wall. As I saw him go, picking his way along the nettles among the brambles, or bound with the green mounds, he looked in the young eyes, and it were eluding the hands of the dead people, stretching and cautiously out of the graves to twist up on his ankle and pull him in. When he came to the low church wall, he got over it, and like a man whose legs was numbed and stiff, he turned around and looked for me. He saw that him turning, that I set my face towards him and made the best use of my legs. Presently I looked over my shoulder, and I saw him going on again towards the river, and still hung with himself with both arms and picking his way with a sore feet. With the moment the great stones dropped into the marshes here and there was stepping places when the rain were heavy and tide was in. The marshes were just as long as the black horizontal line then I stopped to look back after him, and the river was another horizontal line, not nearly broad nor yet so black. The sky was just as long and angular red lines, dense black lines intermixed on the edge of the river that I couldn't faintly make only two black things in the prospect seemed to standing upright with one of the best Was the beaking, and the sailor steered like an unhooped cask upon the pole. Ugly thing that you were near it. The other gibbet, a place of people are hanged or executed with some chains hanging it with the hands once held a pirate. The man was limping on towards the later, and it was here that a pirate come to life, and come down, and going back to hook himself up again. I gave me a terrible turn when I thought I saw so, and I saw a cattle lifting their heads to the gaze after him. I wondered whether they had thought so. I looked around with the horrible young man. For the horrible young man, I could see no signs of him, but now I was frightened again and ran home without stopping. And that's Charles Dickens, The Great Expectations, London, Chapman Hall, 1861. And then, based on the one possible thing of the novel, The Lure of Evil, Passage Time, Power and Fear, Relation, Hunter, and Effects, Pip discovers graves, fearful man reveals his appliance. Man emerges of the graveyard, accosts Pip. Skipping the books. Alright, summary of learning objectives. Understand the general guidelines. What can you expect with the reading of literature? When you are taking a literature class, you can expect with a good deal with the reading, writing, with just with the reading speed, with the necessary read each work several times. Note that you read with the looking for the interpretation, focus on the things bad, with the think critically, write with a review. Identify the strategies, reading, analyzing poetry, which drive can you with reading and poetry. Several strategies you with reading poetry, read poem with one straight through. Use punctuation guide with the comprehension of the notes of the action, analyze with the poem intent with determine who is speaking with the define with the speaker with the tone, and identify whom the poem is. Drive the reread, confusing section aloud. Check with the unfamiliar references, look for the meaning of the theme. Identify strategy for the reading and interpreting short stories. What are the elements of the short story? 6 elements of the short story. Supply assuming the character with the point of view with the tone of the theme. Identify strategy for the reading with interpreting novel. Which storage strategies can you use with the reading with a novel? When reading a novel, the first step is to study with the title, preview of the work before reading. Attention from the opening and paragraph. Notice how the plot evolves. Determine the narrator's role. Stay with the characteristics. Highlight, make notes as you read, and pay attention to the language. Analyze novel themes. Alright, part 3, reading academic disciplines.